It's also too with the intuitive, it's like just people are like so good at regurgitating buzzwords. Because like with the intuitive, and I've said this before, it's like people's sense of intuitive is so different. And it's actually very hard to intuitive eat if you've spent your whole life not listening to your body's cues.
Right.
And it actually takes a lot more. It's actually not about the food or the eating. It's actually more about your emotional relationship with food than anything, or emotional and habitual way of eating food, because intuitive eating is like, so say that you've had to ignore your intuitive cues your whole life. You've never felt like you could nourish yourself. You always felt like you were on a diet. There's so many different things that kind of keep people from intuitive eating. So it's really not that easy for most people, but everyone's like, you should intuitive eat. Everyone should intuitive eat. It's like, of course.
Right.
Of course.
And my whole thing, I totally agree with you, is that in order to truly eat intuitively, I think a lot of people should first find some kind of way to cleanse their body. And I use that word very lightly because there's a million different types of cleanses that include
like the master
food.
cleanse, Jordan.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly.
Lemon and
Cleanse
maple
and
cayenne.
detox.
Yeah,
Tell me more.
Exactly. So a cleanse could be
Like, be very careful.
Right. Do any type of cleanse that you want. I've seen people achieve this with Whole30. I've seen them achieve it with more of a vegan diet, or even just finding like there's all these healthy cleansing centers that I've gone to. I think I've explored all of them, if anybody has questions. But from there, I find it so much easier for people to eat intuitively because they balance their gut microbiome.
Yes.
They are not having these ravenous sugar cravings that come from a deeper place. And when you're not feeling well and you're sick and tired and you might have parasites, chronic illness, mold, all these things that I personally have dealt with, it's very hard to eat intuitively. Very hard. I remember when I first stopped being vegan and thought that I was eating intuitively, and I was just eating terribly, and I felt very sick all the time. Oh my God.
I'm laughing because I think we were kind of doing keto stuff at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, yo, why am I a puffball? And I was like, yo, you're eting like 2 full avocados a day. You're having a whole jar of nut butter. Like, what the fuck was I doing?
You know I gained 40 pounds. Like, I gained 40 pounds in 6 months. It was traumatizing.
And I'm laughing just because it's so absurd.
It's absurd. And taking the weight out of it, because I could care less about the number on the scale, I felt terrible.
Same.
I had cystic acne. I was running a marathon and gaining weight with every extra mile that I would add to my routine. It was very strange. So yes, I was eating keto like you. And I felt like if it's keto, I can eat anything. And there was a lot of bacon, burgers, eggs, tons of oil, pizza, pizza's not keto, but all the fats. It's just not me.
Yes.
And it's, what's sad and funny is that like that couldn't have been further from intuitive.
Yeah.
But that way of eating, I would say, is super celebrated right now because it's like, it's more accepted, I think, than these fringe ways of life that I've had to start living because of healing from chronic illness, which I totally recognize is not for everybody, but it's so freeing and it's so liberating and it's my hugest passion. So it works for me.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about, the word intuitive and then just how... I don't know if it's like sometimes brands. So keto has a bunch of brands that could, benefit off of people kind of hopping on that train. But it's like selling it as intuitive eating, but then the capitalism rushes in and like all of these brands rush in and people forget that this might not be good for their own body.
Exactly.
So it's like there's so much buzz around us that we cannot tune into our own like personal Wi-Fi on that end.
Yeah, I mean, think about how most of our entire lives have been giving our power away in a lot of ways. And think about how much we've given our power away as it relates to our diet. Every single one of us has done a crazy, silly diet. Most of us have been, there's nothing that people try and have people tell them what to do more than how much people try and have other people tell them how to eat.
Yeah,
exactly.
That is why people online are so big in nutrition and like eating because they're like, tell me what to eat. Tell me when to eat it. Like when people do what I eat in a day is like, which are totally fine. People love those because they're like, okay, this is how I'm going to eat. Like it is very hard after your entire life to connect back to what is intuitive eating.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very hard. And I think there's that way. I think for me, mine has been like, has to be more in therapy. It has to be more therapeutic approach. I have to do a lot of untangling. I have to do a lot of like digging back into my childhood and my life and really relearn and rethink about the ways where I've been told I shouldn't nourish myself. I've been told that I don't deserve to eat or whatever the things are. And yeah, and so I'm happy that that is a trend. I don't think it's a trend. I'm happy that that is coming on board because I think it's definitely the best way to eat. But I just think that it's harder than people think. And I think a lot of people that are teaching it are people that have maybe not had that as their main issue around food and diet their whole life and are kind of teaching it as if everyone should intuitively know. But I don't think most people know how to tap into their food body intuition.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Morning Microdose by Almost 30.
We hope you enjoyed waking up.
As always, we encourage you to take what resonates and leave the rest. If you enjoyed this trip, tune into the full episode on the Almost 30 podcast. All episode information can be found in the show notes.
Make sure to subscribe, and if this becomes a part of your morning routine, be sure to share it with a friend. We have new inspiring doses Monday through Friday. Follow us on Instagram at Morning Microdose and follow Almost 30 at Almost 30 Podcast.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the vortex.